Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe dignity should never be taken from anyone, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Naomi Brooks. Naomi only needed 3 things from the grocery store that night: a carton of milk, a loaf of bread, and the small orange bottle of medicine her mother had forgotten to pick up from the pharmacy. That was all. No drama, no trouble, no eyes on her. Just one quiet stop after a 12-hour shift inside the Romano mansion, where the floors shone like black glass and the walls heard more secrets than any church confessional. The grocery store sat on the corner of 9th and Bell, glowing under tired fluorescent lights. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, turning the parking lot into a sheet of silver. Inside, the air smelled of wet coats, fresh bread, and oranges stacked in bright pyramids near the entrance. Naomi moved through the aisles with the quiet discipline of someone who had learned not to take up space. Her black uniform was hidden beneath a plain gray sweater. Her hair was tied back. Her hands, still smelling faintly of lemon polish from the mansion, gripped the basket handle as she counted prices in her head. Milk, bread, medicine, nothing extra. At the checkout line, she placed the items down carefully, one by one. The cashier barely looked up. Behind her, a child begged his mother for candy. Somewhere near aisle 3, a freezer hummed too loudly. Naomi reached into her purse for her wallet. Then she heard the voice. Well, look who still shops like she's counting pennies. Her fingers froze inside the purse. The sound hit her before the meaning did. That voice carried years in it. Locked doors, broken promises, apologies that always came too late. A smile that could turn cruel before she had time to breathe. Naomi did not turn around immediately. She already knew. Marcus Hale stepped into the checkout lane as if the whole store belonged to him. He wore a leather jacket slick with rain, a gold chain at his neck, and the same lazy grin he used to wear when he wanted the world to believe he was harmless. But Naomi knew better. The cashier looked up now. So did the woman behind Marcus. So did the man pretending to compare cereal boxes at the end of the aisle. Marcus leaned closer, his eyes dragging over Naomi's sweater, her tired face, the simple groceries on the belt. Still working for rich people? He said, loud enough for the line to hear. Still cleaning floors and calling it a life? Naomi swallowed. Her voice came out quiet. Please move, Marcus. He laughed. Not loudly. Worse than that. Softly. Like he owned the memory of her fear. Please move, he repeated, mocking her tone. You always were polite when you were scared. The cashier shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Naomi picked up the medicine bottle and placed it closer to her purse. Marcus noticed. His hand shot out and took it before she could stop him. What's this? He turned the label toward the light. Medicine for your mama? Still taking care of everybody but yourself, huh? A heat rose behind Naomi's eyes, but she did not cry. She had promised herself years ago that Marcus Hale would never see her tears again. Give it back, she said. Marcus smiled wider. And that was when the grocery store began to change. Not because anyone helped her, but because everyone was watching. The mother with the child pulled him a little closer. The cashier's hand hovered near the scanner. The man by the cereal aisle looked away, then looked back again, ashamed of his own silence. Marcus stepped in front of Naomi, blocking the narrow lane. Tell me something, he said. That mafia boss you work for, what's his name? Romano. He chuckled. You really think a man like that cares whether some maid makes it home safe? Naomi's grip tightened around the strap of her purse. You don't know anything about him. I know men like him, Marcus said. And I know women like you. He leaned closer. You're useful until you're not. The words landed harder than she expected. Not because she believed them, but because once, long ago, she had. Naomi lowered her eyes, not in surrender, but to steady herself. On the floor near her shoes, rainwater from Marcus's boots spread in a thin dark line across the white tile. Then Marcus reached for her grocery bag. The paper tore. Oranges spilled from the small side basket beside the counter, rolling across the floor in bright, helpless circles. One rolled past Naomi's shoe. Another bumped against the metal leg of the checkout stand. And one stopped beside a pair of polished black shoes. The store went quiet. A man bent down and picked up the orange. Naomi looked up. Dante Romano stood at the end of the aisle, holding the fruit in one hand, his dark eyes fixed on Marcus Hale. He had heard everything, and he had not smiled once. Dante Romano looked nothing like the man Naomi usually saw inside the mansion. There was no black tailored suit tonight, no gold cufflinks, no line of silent men standing behind him. He wore a dark wool coat over a gray shirt, open at the collar, his hair slightly damp from the rain outside. In one hand, he held a small paper bag of fruit. In the other, he held the orange Marcus had knocked to the floor. To anyone else, he might have looked like an ordinary man stopping for groceries after work. But the heir knew better. So did Naomi. So did Marcus, though it took him a few seconds longer to understand why the entire aisle suddenly felt colder. Dante straightened slowly. His eyes moved first to the torn grocery bag, then to the scattered oranges, then to Naomi's face. He did not look at Marcus yet. That somehow made it worse. Naomi, Dante said quietly. Her name in his voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Marcus blinked. You know this guy? Naomi did not answer. Her throat had tightened so badly, she could barely breathe. Dante stepped closer, his shoes silent against the white tile. He placed the orange gently on the checkout counter, beside the carton of milk and the medicine bottle Marcus still held in his hand. Then his eyes finally moved to Marcus. Give it back. Marcus gave a short laugh, but it had no strength in it. Excuse me. The medicine, Dante said. Give it back to her. There was no threat in his voice. No anger that showed. Just a calm so controlled it made the cashier take one step backward. Marcus looked around, suddenly aware of the witnesses. The mother with the child. The cashier. The man near the cereal aisle. The elderly woman. Gripping a basket of canned soup. People who had watched Naomi be cornered. People who had said nothing. Marcus tried to recover his pride. Look, man, this is between me and her. Dante's face did not change. When a man humiliates a woman in public, he said, he makes it everyone's business. The words fell into the aisle like glass breaking. Naomi felt them hit somewhere deep inside her chest. Marcus's jaw tightened. You don't know what she is. Dante tilted his head slightly. What is she? The question was soft. Dangerously soft. Marcus looked at Naomi with that old cruel smirk, the one that used to make her shrink before he even raised his voice. She's nobody, he said. Just a maid. For 1 second, no one moved. Even the freezer hum seemed to fade. Naomi stared at the floor. Not because she was ashamed. Because if she looked at anyone, she might finally break. Dante's gaze remained on Marcus. Then, slowly, he removed his coat. The movement was calm. Almost gentle. He slipped one sleeve off, then the other, folded the heavy dark fabric over his arm, and stepped toward Naomi. She looked up only when his shadow crossed the floor in front of her. Dante did not ask permission with words. He asked with his eyes. Naomi gave the smallest nod. He draped the coat over her shoulders. It was warm from his body, heavy with rain and cedar cologne. It covered the gray sweater Marcus had mocked. It covered her shaking hands. It covered, somehow, the years she had spent believing she had to stand alone. Dante adjusted the collar so it would not slip. Then he turned back to Marcus. She works in my home, Dante said. She is trusted with rooms most men will never enter. She knows where my daughter keeps her favorite storybook. She knows how I take my coffee when I have not slept. She knows which hallway floorboard creaks outside my office. His voice lowered. And in 4 months, she has shown more dignity than you have shown in 4 minutes. Marcus's face changed. The arrogance flickered. Underneath it, fear began to show. Naomi saw it and almost did not recognize him. For years, Marcus had been the loudest person in every room. He fed on silence, on people looking away, on Naomi apologizing just to end the storm. But now he had found a man who did not look away. Dante glanced at the medicine bottle. Marcus swallowed, then placed it on the counter. Not handed it to Naomi. Placed it down, as if touching her life directly had suddenly become too dangerous. Dante picked it up and gave it to Naomi. Is this everything you came for? He asked. Naomi nodded, her fingers closing around the bottle. Yes, sir. Marcus scoffed weakly. Sir? That's what he gets? You always did like being owned. The words barely left his mouth before the cashier gasped. Dante did not move fast. He did not need to. He simply stepped between Marcus and Naomi, blocking her from view. The entire store seemed to hold its breath. Choose your next words, Dante said, as if they will follow you for the rest of your life. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And for the first time since Naomi had known him, Marcus Hale had no one smaller to hide behind. The silence after Dante's warning did something strange to Marcus. It did not make him calmer. It made him smaller. For the first time that night, Marcus Hale looked around and realized the grocery store was no longer his stage. The people he had expected to embarrass Naomi in front of were watching him now. Not her. Him. The mother near the candy rack held her child close, but her eyes had hardened. The elderly woman with the basket of soup stared at Marcus like she had seen men like him before and had run out of patience for them. The cashier, pale and nervous, slowly moved one hand beneath the counter. Marcus noticed. His face twisted. "Oh, so now everybody cares," he snapped, throwing his arms out. 5 minutes ago, none of you said a word." No one answered. Because he was right. And that truth made the room even heavier. Naomi felt Dante's coat resting on her shoulders. Warm and almost too heavy. She wanted to disappear inside it. She wanted to leave the store, go home, check on her mother, and pretend this had never happened. But some part of her knew this moment was not just about groceries anymore. It was about every time Marcus had raised his voice and she had lowered hers. Every time. Someone had watched and decided it was easier not to get involved. Every time she had been told to be grateful for the bare minimum of kindness. Dante turned slightly, just enough for Naomi to see his profile. "Did you drive here?" he asked her. Naomi shook her head. "The bus." "Then you're not taking the bus tonight." Marcus laughed again, louder now, desperate to pull the attention back to himself. "Look at that. One little scene, and suddenly she gets a ride from the king." Dante looked at him. Marcus stopped laughing. It was not fear of fists that quieted him. Dante had not raised a hand. He had not touched him. That was what made it worse. Marcus could understand anger. He could understand shouting. He could even understand threats. But this calm, this absolute control, left him with nothing to push against. Dante reached into his pocket and took out his phone. "Enzo," he said after one ring. "Front entrance. 2 minutes." Naomi's heart jumped. "Mr. Romano, please," she whispered. "I don't want trouble." Dante lowered the phone and looked at her. For the first time that night, his expression softened. "You didn't make this trouble, Naomi." Her lips parted, but no words came. Because no one had ever said that to her so plainly before. Marcus pointed at her, anger returning now that Dante's attention had shifted. "She always does this," he said to the room. "Acts innocent. Makes men feel sorry for her. You don't know her." Dante slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I know enough." "No, you don't." Marcus stepped forward. "You don't know what she was like with me." Naomi's fingers tightened around the medicine bottle. There it was. The old trap. He would drag the past into the light, twist it until strangers looked at her differently, until she felt dirty for surviving him. He had done it before. At restaurants. On sidewalks. In front of friends who slowly stopped calling because her life felt too complicated to stand near. But Dante did not turn to ask Naomi if it was true. He kept his eyes on Marcus. "What she was like with you," Dante said, "is none of my concern." Marcus blinked. "What matters," Dante continued, "is what you are like without control." The words landed cleanly. No shouting. No insult. Just truth. Marcus's mouth tightened, but before he could answer, the store manager appeared from behind the customer service desk. He was a thin man with a red name tag and the anxious face of someone who had waited too long to do the right thing. "Sir," the manager said to Marcus, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Marcus turned on him immediately. "Are you serious?" "Yes," the manager said, voice shaking. "You're disturbing customers." Dante's eyes moved slowly to the manager. The man swallowed. "And harassing this woman," he added. That mattered. Naomi felt it. Not because the manager was brave. He had not been brave at first. But eventually, even late courage was better than permanent silence. Marcus looked from the manager to Dante, then to Naomi. His face had lost its color beneath the harsh lights. "This isn't over," he said. Naomi expected the words to cut her. They didn't. Dante stepped aside just enough so Marcus could see her clearly. Naomi lifted her chin. For years, she had imagined this moment. What she would say if Marcus ever found her again. She had pictured speeches, anger, tears, proof that she had become stronger. But standing there with oranges on the floor and Dante Romano's coat around her shoulders, she realized strength did not always need a speech. Sometimes it was just not stepping back. "It is over," Naomi said. Her voice was quiet, but it reached every corner of the aisle. Marcus stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he did not understand. Then the front doors opened. Two men in dark coats entered from the rain and stood near the registers, silent as shadows. Marcus looked at them, then at Dante. Then finally, he walked away. Marcus did not run. Men like Marcus never ran when people were watching. He walked slowly, shoulders stiff, jaw locked, pretending the two men in dark coats near the entrance did not frighten him. Pretending Dante Romano had not taken the entire room away from him without raising his voice. But Naomi saw the truth. She saw it in the way Marcus's hand trembled when he pushed through the automatic doors. She saw it in the way he glanced back once. Through the rain-streaked glass, his eyes no longer cruel, only cornered. For years, he had made her feel that small. Now he knew what it felt like. The doors closed behind him with a soft mechanical sigh. No one spoke. The grocery store remained frozen in the strange aftermath of courage arriving late. The cashier stared at the scanner. The manager rubbed his hands together, searching for words. The mother near the candy rack looked down at the floor as if the white tiles had suddenly become fascinating. Naomi stood in the middle of it all, Dante's coat wrapped around her shoulders, the medicine bottle pressed against her chest. She should have felt relieved. Instead, her knees almost gave out. Dante noticed before anyone else did. Naomi. She blinked, trying to focus. I'm fine, she said automatically. Dante's expression did not change, but something in his eyes softened again. No, he said quietly. You are standing. That is not the same thing. The words almost broke her. Not because they were cruel. Because they were true. The cashier finally cleared her throat. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I should have said something. Naomi looked at her. The girl could not have been older than 20. Her eyes were wet with shame, her fingers still hovering near the register as if she could rewind the last 10 minutes and become braver sooner. Naomi wanted to be angry. Maybe part of her was. But she was too tired to hold everyone's failure in her hands. Just ring up the groceries, Naomi said softly. The cashier nodded quickly. Dante bent down and began gathering the scattered oranges. That was what made the room shift again. Not the bodyguards, not the name Romano, not the fear that still clung to the doorway where Marcus had disappeared. It was the sight of the most dangerous man in the city crouched on a grocery store floor, picking up fruit that another man had knocked from a maid's basket. One orange, then another, then another. The elderly woman with the canned soup stepped forward and picked up the last one before it could roll beneath the magazine rack. She held it out to Naomi with both hands. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. For watching. Naomi took the orange. Her fingers brushed the woman's wrinkled hand. For a second, she could not speak. Dante placed the rest of the oranges into a new paper bag the cashier had opened with shaking hands. Then he added Naomi's milk, bread, and medicine. The cashier scanned everything. Dante placed a black card on the counter. Naomi turned quickly. No, Mr. Romano. Please. I can pay for my own things. I know, Dante said. Then don't. His hand paused over the card. The whole store watched again, but this time the silence felt different. Naomi straightened beneath his coat. I spent too long letting people decide what I was worth, she said. Please don't make kindness feel like another debt. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he withdrew the card. Naomi paid with her own money. 3 items, a small bag of oranges, a receipt folded neatly into her palm. It should have been nothing. But when the cashier handed her the bag, Naomi felt as if she had just taken back a piece of herself Marcus had been trying to steal for years. Outside, rain blurred the parking lot into silver lines. One of Dante's men opened the door, but Dante raised a hand, telling him to wait. Naomi stepped into the cold air. The coat shielded her from the rain. Behind her, the grocery store lights glowed pale and unforgiving. Dante stood beside her, close enough to protect, far enough not to crowd. Who was he asked. Naomi stared at the wet pavement. A mistake, I survived. Dante nodded once. Not with pity, with respect. And somehow, that hurt more beautifully than pity ever could. Naomi had said the words before she could soften them. A mistake, I survived. The rain kept falling between her and the parking lot, thin and silver under the grocery store lights. Cars moved slowly past the entrance, their tires whispering over wet pavement. Somewhere behind the glass doors, the cashier began serving the next customer, but the store still felt changed, like everyone inside had witnessed something they would not know how to explain later. Dante Romano stood beside Naomi without speaking. That was what made him different from most men she had known. He did not rush to fill her silence, he did not demand the story, he did not turn her pain into something he had a right to own. He simply stood there, broad shoulders squared against the rain, his gray shirt darkening slightly where droplets touched the fabric. His coat remained around Naomi's shoulders, heavy and warm, carrying the faint scent of cedar, smoke, and expensive wool. Naomi stared at the parking lot. I met Marcus when I was 20, she said quietly. Dante did not move. At first, he was charming. Everybody liked him. My mother liked him. My friends thought I was lucky. Her mouth tightened. Men like that always know how to be kind when someone important is watching. A car passed, throwing white light across her face for half a second. Then the darkness returned. He never started cruel, Naomi continued. He started small. My dress was too bright. My laugh was too loud. My friends were bad influences. My dreams were unrealistic. By the time he became cruel in ways I couldn't ignore, I had already started believing I was the problem. Dante's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed controlled. How long? 3 years. The answer was barely a whisper. One of Dante's men shifted near the black car waiting by the curb. Dante gave a slight shake of his head, and the man looked away, giving them privacy without leaving. Naomi noticed. That small restraint almost undid her more than the rescue had. Leaving him was the hardest thing I ever did, she said. Not because I loved him by then. I didn't. I was just tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of apologizing. Tired of waking up scared and calling it normal. Her hand tightened around the grocery bag. And tonight, when he said I was nobody, she swallowed. For a second, I heard the old voice in my head agree with him. Dante turned then. Not fully. Just enough to face her. Naomi. She looked up. His eyes were dark beneath the rain, but there was no pity in them. No soft performance of concern. Only a steady kind of anger, the kind held carefully because it knew the person in front of it needed safety more than rage. You are not nobody, he said. Naomi laughed once, weak and broken. You don't have to say that because I work for you. I am not. Saying it because you work for me. Then why? Dante looked through the glass doors at the grocery store, where customers were pretending not to watch them. Because I have spent my life around men who measure worth by fear, he said. Money, territory, power, noise. His gaze returned to her. And then I watched you stand in that aisle with a man trying to drag you back into the person he needed you to be. Naomi's eyes burned. You did not shout, Dante said. You did not beg. You did not become cruel to match him. His voice lowered. You simply refused to disappear. For several seconds, Naomi could not breathe around the words. She had expected questions, warnings, maybe orders. Dante Romano was a man who solved problems with precision. She had seen men enter his office proud and leave pale. But this was not strategy. This was recognition, the kind she had not known she needed. The black car pulled closer to the curb. Enzo stepped out and opened the rear door, rain beating on his dark coat. Naomi glanced toward the bus stop across the street. A small shelter with cracked plastic walls and a flickering light. She had stood there 100 times after late shifts, arms wrapped around herself, praying no one dangerous would notice she was alone. Tonight, the thought of standing there made her stomach twist. Dante saw it. You are not taking the bus, he said. This time, Naomi did not argue, but she did slip his coat from her shoulders and hold it out. Thank you, she said. For this. Dante looked at the coat, then at her. Keep it until we reach the car. A faint smile touched her mouth for the first time that night. That sounded like an order. It was a suggestion with authority. The smallest breath of laughter escaped her. It surprised them both. For a moment, the rain felt less cold. Naomi walked toward the car, Dante beside her. Not ahead like an owner. Not behind like a guard. Beside her, at the open door, she paused and looked back at the grocery store. Through the glass, she saw the elderly woman still watching. The woman lifted one hand gently. Naomi lifted hers back. Then she got into the car. As Dante closed the door, Naomi held the medicine bottle in her lap and realized something that made her chest ache. Marcus had cornered her in public to remind her of who she used to be. But Dante had taken off his jacket and reminded her she was still worthy of warmth. The inside of Dante Romano's car was warmer than Naomi expected. Soft black leather. Tinted windows. The low hum of an engine so quiet it felt expensive. Rain slid down the glass in silver threads, bending the grocery store lights into long, trembling lines. Naomi sat in the back seat with the grocery bag beside her and the medicine bottle resting in her palm. For several seconds, no one spoke. Enzo drove. Another man sat in the front passenger seat, silent and still. Dante sat beside Naomi, close enough that she could feel the weight of his presence, but not so close that she felt trapped. That mattered, more than he probably knew. Naomi looked down at the medicine label, running her thumb over her mother's name. "Can you drop me at my mother's apartment first?" she asked. "She needs this tonight." "Address," Dante said. She gave it softly. Enzo entered it into the navigation system without comment. The car pulled away from the curb. Through the rear window, the grocery store grew smaller, its bright windows fading behind the rain. Naomi watched until it disappeared completely, as if part of her expected Marcus to come running after them. He didn't. Still, her body had not learned that the danger was gone. Her hands kept trembling. She hid them by gripping the grocery bag. Dante noticed. Of course he noticed. "There is water in the side console," he said. Naomi reached for the bottle, grateful for something ordinary to do. She twisted the cap open, took one small sip, then another. Her throat hurt. Not from shouting. From everything she had not said. Dante looked out the window. "How long has he known where you work?" Naomi's stomach tightened. "I don't think he did," she said. "Not until tonight. I was wearing the old agency sweater. It has the Romano house number stitched inside the tag. Maybe he saw it when he grabbed my bag." Dante's face hardened, but his voice remained calm. "Then the agency made a mistake." "No," Naomi said quickly. "Please don't blame them. I should have cut the tag out." Dante turned to her. That look again. Not angry at her. Angry at the shape of a world that had trained her to apologize before anyone accused her. "You are not responsible for a man choosing cruelty," he said. Naomi looked away. The city slid past in blurred fragments. Closed cafes, wet sidewalks, headlights smearing gold across the pavement. People walked under umbrellas, each carrying their own quiet story home. She wondered how many women were out there right now, smiling at strangers while hiding old fear in their bones. "My mother doesn't know everything," Naomi said suddenly. Dante waited. "She knows Marcus wasn't good to me, but not the details." Naomi swallowed. "She's sick. Her blood pressure gets bad when she worries. I told her I left because we wanted different things. That was generous. It was easier." "No," Dante said. "It was lonely." Naomi turned to him. The words had been too accurate. Dante's eyes stayed on the rain-streaked window, but his voice had changed, gone lower, quieter. "My mother used to do that," he said. "Turn pain into something smaller so other people could survive hearing it." Naomi studied his profile. In the mansion, Dante Romano was always controlled. A man carved from shadow and command. Staff lowered their voices when he entered a room. Men in suits stopped laughing. Even the house seemed to hold its breath around him. But in the dim back seat, with rain tapping against the glass, he looked almost human, almost haunted. She passed. Naomi asked gently. Dante nodded once. "Years ago. I'm sorry." He accepted the words with silence. The car slowed near a red light. Across the street, a small church stood between two apartment buildings, its stained glass windows dark. Naomi watched rain gather on the stone steps. "I used to pray he would change," she said. Dante's gaze returned to her. "Marcus." She nodded. "I thought if I loved him better, spoke softer, dressed differently, stopped making him angry, maybe he'd become the man he pretended to be at the beginning." Her mouth trembled. "That's the cruelest part, I think. Missing someone who was never real." Dante did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Some people do not want love. They want ownership and call it love because the word sounds cleaner." Naomi closed her eyes. The sentence entered her like a key turning in a locked room. For years, she had blamed herself for not saving what Marcus had destroyed. But maybe there had been nothing to save. Maybe she had not failed at love. Maybe she had escaped possession. The car turned onto a narrower street lined with old brick buildings. Naomi recognized the corner store with the faded blue awning, the laundromat with one broken neon letter, the bus stop where her mother used to wait for her after school when Naomi was little. Home, or what was left of it. Enzo parked outside a modest apartment building with cracked front steps and warm yellow light glowing from a second-floor window. Naomi reached for the door handle. Dante spoke before she opened it. "I'll walk you up." She almost refused out of habit. Then she remembered what he had said. You are not responsible for a man choosing cruelty. Naomi nodded. All right. Dante stepped out first, opened an umbrella, then held it over her as she climbed from the car with the grocery bag in one hand and her mother's medicine in the other. For the first time that night, Naomi did not feel like she was running from something. She felt like she was bringing herself home. Naomi's mother lived on the second floor of a brick building that smelled of old wood, boiled rice, and rainwater soaking into tired carpet. The hallway lights flickered as Naomi climbed the stairs with Dante beside her. He carried the grocery bag without asking. She carried the medicine bottle in both hands, as if it were something fragile enough to save a life. Behind them, one of Dante's men remained downstairs by the entrance. Not too close, not too far. Naomi noticed that, too. At apartment 2B, she paused before knocking. Through the door came the faint sound of an old television, low and warm, some late-night cooking show her mother liked to fall asleep to. For a moment, Naomi closed her eyes. She could still feel Marcus's voice in her ears. Just a maid. She opened her eyes and knocked. A few slow footsteps approached. The chain slid back. The door opened halfway, and Evelyn Brooks appeared in a faded blue robe, silver-threaded curls wrapped in a scarf, reading glasses hanging from a cord around her neck. Her face brightened when she saw Naomi. Then her eyes moved to Dante, and froze. Naomi straightened quickly. Mama, this is Mr. Romano. My employer. Evelyn looked at Dante's expensive shirt, the watch at his wrist, the quiet authority in his posture. Then she looked at the grocery bag in his hand. My daughter's employer brings groceries now. Dante did not smile, but his eyes softened with respect. Only when your daughter has had a difficult night, ma'am. Evelyn's face changed instantly. A mother could hear what a daughter did not say. Naomi. I'm okay, Naomi said too fast. Evelyn opened the door wider. Come inside. The apartment was small but spotless. A crocheted blanket lay folded over the arm of the sofa. Family photos lined the wall near the kitchen. Naomi at 8 with missing front teeth. Naomi at graduation. Naomi holding her mother's hand outside a hospital 2 summers ago. Dante stepped in and seemed to understand immediately that this was sacred ground. He did not look around like a rich man judging a poor home. He looked around like a guest. That mattered to Evelyn. Naomi saw it in the way her mother's shoulders lowered just a little. Naomi handed her the medicine. I'm sorry it's late. The pharmacy line was long. Evelyn took the bottle, but her eyes stayed on Naomi's face. Baby, don't lie to me in my own kitchen. The words were gentle. That made them harder. Naomi looked down. Dante placed the grocery bag on the counter. I'll wait outside, he said. No, Evelyn said. Dante stopped. The room went still. Evelyn Brooks was not tall. Her body had grown thinner after years of illness, and her hands trembled when she held the medicine bottle. But in that moment, standing beneath the yellow kitchen light, she looked at Dante Romano as if no amount of money, danger, or reputation could outrank motherhood. If you brought my child home looking like that, Evelyn said, then you already know enough to stay. Naomi's eyes filled before she could stop them. Mama. Evelyn reached for her. That was all it took. Naomi crossed the kitchen and folded into her mother's arms like she was 6 years old again. The grocery store, the rain, Marcus, the watching strangers, all of it cracked open inside her. She did not sob loudly. Naomi had learned long ago to cry quietly, but Evelyn felt every tremor. Oh, my girl, she whispered, one hand smoothing Naomi's hair. What did he do? Dante turned his eyes away, not out of discomfort, out of respect. Naomi breathed against her mother's shoulder. Marcus found me. Evelyn's face hardened. The name entered the room like smoke. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Evelyn looked over Naomi's shoulder at Dante. And you were there? Yes, ma'am. What did you do? Dante's answer was quiet. What should have been done sooner? Evelyn studied him, not as a frightened woman, as a mother measuring the soul of a dangerous man. Then she nodded once. Good. Naomi pulled back, wiping her face quickly. I didn't want you to worry. Evelyn cupped her daughter's cheek. Child, I have been worrying since the day you learned to hide pain behind manners. The sentence landed softly, but it split Naomi open. Dante looked at Naomi then, and something in his expression shifted, as if he was finally understanding that what happened in the grocery store was not an interruption in her life. It was a doorway into a wound she had been carrying with perfect posture. A phone buzzed. Naomi flinched. The sound came from her purse. No one moved. Slowly, she reached inside and pulled out her phone. Unknown number. Then a message appeared on the screen. You embarrassed me tonight. You'll regret that. The apartment turned cold. Evelyn gripped Naomi's wrist. Dante held out his hand. May I? Naomi hesitated only a second before giving him the phone. Dante read the message once. His face became unreadable. Not angry. Worse. Still. He handed the phone back to Naomi, then turned toward the door. Mr. Romano? Evelyn said. He paused. What happens now? Dante looked back at Naomi. For the first time that night, his voice carried the full weight of the man the city feared. Now, he said, he learns. That silence is not permission. Dante did not raise his voice. That frightened Naomi more than shouting would have. He stood in her mother's small apartment with her phone in his hand, the threat glowing on the screen like a dirty fingerprint left behind by a man who still believed fear belonged to him. Evelyn Brooks sat at the kitchen table now, one hand pressed to her chest, the other wrapped around Naomi's fingers. The medicine bottle stood unopened beside a glass of water. Mr. Romano, Naomi said carefully, please don't do anything that will make this worse. Dante looked at her. For a second, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then he placed the phone gently on the table. I won't make it worse, he said. I'll make it documented. Naomi blinked. That was not what she expected. Dante turned toward the door. Enzo. The door opened almost immediately. Enzo stepped inside, rain still shining on the shoulders of his black coat. Boss. Screenshot the message. Preserve the number. Contact Attorney Bellini. I want a restraining order filed first thing in the morning. Also call Officer Reyes. Naomi looked up sharply. Police. Dante's eyes returned to her. Yes. She stared at him, confused by the calmness of it. Men like Dante Romano were not supposed to call the police. They were supposed to exist in the dark spaces between law and fear. As if hearing her thoughts, Dante said, a man like Marcus expects shadows. So we give him lights, paperwork, witnesses, cameras, everything he cannot twist later. Evelyn studied him from across the table. You've done this before. Dante's face did not move. I've seen men like him before. There was a difference. Naomi heard it. Enzo took the phone, photographed the message, and sent it to someone with quick, practiced movements. He asked Naomi for Marcus's full name, old address, workplace if she knew it, and whether he had ever contacted her from unknown numbers before. Each question was professional, controlled, no judgment. Still, every answer felt like pulling a thorn from under her skin. Marcus Hale, Naomi said. He used to work at a repair shop on Fulton. I don't know if he still does. Enzo nodded. And he passed. Reports. Naomi looked down. No, Evelyn squeezed her hand. Naomi's voice grew smaller. I thought no one would believe me. Dante's jaw tightened. But he did not interrupt her. That restraint mattered. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the city. Evelyn finally opened her medicine and took one pill with water. Her hands trembled, but her eyes remained sharp. I told her to leave him, she said quietly. Naomi turned. Mama, I did, Evelyn continued. I saw the way he made you smaller. A mother notices when her daughter starts asking permission to breathe. Naomi's throat closed. Evelyn looked at Dante. But I didn't know how bad it was. She protected me from the truth because she thought my heart was too weak. Her voice softened. My heart is old, baby. Not weak. Naomi covered her mouth with one hand, trying to stop the tears. Dante looked away again, giving her the dignity of not being watched while she broke. Then Naomi's phone buzzed again in Enzo's hand. Everyone froze. Another unknown number. Enzo looked at Dante before reading it aloud. Dante gave one nod. Enzo's voice was flat. Tell your boss he can't protect you forever. The apartment went silent. Evelyn's face drained of color. Naomi felt the old fear rise fast, cold, familiar. Her body remembered before her mind could argue. The grocery store, the block dial, the medicine in Marcus's hand. His voice saying she was nobody. Dante reached for the phone. He read the message once. Then he did something Naomi did not expect. He smiled. Not with humor, with certainty. He made a mistake, Dante said. Naomi's voice shook. How is that a mistake? Because the first message threatened you, Dante said. This one confirms intent after a witness intervened. He looked at Enzo. Send both to Bellini and Reyes. Request patrol near this building tonight. We'll provide the grocery store footage and witness names. Enzo nodded and stepped into the hallway to make the call. Naomi stared at Dante. You remembered the witnesses? I remember everything in a room where someone is being harmed. The words settled over her quietly. Evelyn looked down at her daughter's hand. For years, she whispered, I prayed. Someone would stand beside you when I couldn't. Naomi shook her head, tears slipping now. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. Dante's voice softened. Being hurt is not shameful, Naomi. The shame belongs to the person who chose to hurt you. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Evelyn rose slowly from the table, walked to Dante, and placed one thin hand over his. You're a dangerous man, Mr. Romano. Dante did not deny it. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn looked into his eyes. Then be dangerous in the right direction. The sentence landed like a command. Dante bowed his head slightly. I intend to. Outside, sirens passed somewhere far away, fading into the rain. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in her mother's warmth and the echo of Dante's promise, realizing this was not revenge. This was something Marcus feared even more. A record. A witness. A woman no longer standing alone. Morning came gray and quiet over the city. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the streets washed clean and shining beneath a pale sky. Naomi barely slept. She sat on her mother's sofa with a blanket over her knees, listening to the old radiator hiss and watching shadows move across the ceiling. Every time her phone lit up, her heart jumped. But Marcus did not send another message. That should have comforted her. It didn't. Men like Marcus often went quiet before trying to make noise again. By 7:30, Dante's attorney had filed the paperwork. By 8, Officer Reyes had called Naomi directly, calm and professional, asking her to come to the precinct later that morning to give a statement. By 8:15, the grocery store manager had turned over the security footage. By 9, Marcus Hale walked into the same grocery store. He was not smiling this time. Naomi was not there to see it, but Dante was. He stood near the customer service desk in a black suit, freshly pressed, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood Attorney Bellini, a silver-haired woman with sharp glasses and a folder tucked under one arm. Officer Reyes waited near the front entrance with another uniformed officer. The store looked different in daylight. Less dramatic. Less cinematic. Just shelves, shopping carts, discount signs, and people buying breakfast cereal. But some places remember what happened inside them. The cashier from the night before stood behind the counter, twisting her fingers together. The elderly woman with the canned soup had come back too, wearing the same beige coat, her chin lifted with quiet purpose. Marcus froze when he saw them. Then his eyes found Dante. What is this? Marcus demanded. Dante did not answer. Officer Reyes stepped forward. Marcus Hale? Marcus's face tightened. Yeah. We need to speak with you regarding harassment, threats, and an incident that occurred here last night. Marcus laughed, but the sound cracked halfway through. Are you serious? Over a little argument. Attorney Bellini opened the folder. Security footage shows you blocking Ms. Brooks from leaving the checkout lane, taking her property, and intimidating her in front of witnesses. We also have 2 threatening messages sent after the incident. Marcus looked toward the cashier. She lowered her eyes, then raised them again. I saw it, she said softly. He wouldn't let her pass. Marcus's jaw clenched. The elderly woman stepped forward. I saw it too, she said. And I saw that woman stand there with more grace than he deserved. The room went still. Marcus looked around, searching for the old world, the one where people stayed silent because silence was convenient. But that world had changed overnight. Not everywhere. Not forever. But here, in this small grocery store, under these plain white lights, it had changed enough. Officer Reyes held out a document. You are being served notice. You are not to contact Ms. Brooks directly or indirectly. You are not to approach her residence, her workplace, or her mother's building. Violating this order will have consequences. Marcus snatched the paper, his face burning. Then he looked at Dante. You think paperwork scares me? Dante stepped closer. Not much. Just enough. No, Dante said quietly. I think being seen does. Marcus's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because Dante was right. For men like Marcus, cruelty worked best in corners. In private rooms. In public places where strangers looked away. But now there were cameras, statements, officers, signatures, witnesses. There was a record. and records had a way of surviving louder men. Across town, Naomi sat beside her mother at the precinct, hands folded tightly in her lap. Officer Reyes listened without rushing her. Evelyn sat close enough for their shoulders to touch. When Naomi finished, the room was quiet. Not empty quiet. Respectful quiet. The kind of silence that says, "We heard you." Later that afternoon, Dante drove her back to the Romano mansion. Naomi still wore her plain gray sweater. Her eyes were tired, but something in the way she held herself had changed. She was not healed. Healing was not that simple. But she was no longer folded inward like someone trying to take up less space. At the mansion entrance, Dante handed her his coat, cleaned and dry. Naomi looked at it, then at him. "I can't keep this forever." "No," Dante said. "But you can keep what it meant." Her fingers closed around the fabric. For once, she did not argue. That evening, Naomi placed the coat carefully over the back of a chair in the staff room. She took out her phone, deleted Marcus's old messages one by one, then saved the case number Officer Reyes had given her. Not because she wanted to remember the fear, because she wanted proof that she had survived it. Outside, the mansion lights glowed against the dark. And somewhere in the city, Marcus Hale finally learned that a woman's silence was never surrender. Sometimes, it was only the breath she took before standing tall. And that day, the world remembered what dignity looks like.